I've driven that highway hundreds of times. But that night, my GPS took me somewhere I'd never been and showed me something I was never supposed to see. By the time my car stopped in front of that abandoned house, I understood why it brought me there. And I'll never be the same. My name is Jocelyn Merritt. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a veterinary technician outside Columbus, Ohio. I'm the kind of person who needs a logical explanation for everything. I don't believe in signs from the universe. I don't believe in fate, or at least I didn't. Not until October 17th of last year. That was the night my GPS stopped giving me directions and started giving me orders. That was the night I found out that some roads don't show up on any map, and that was the night I saved a woman's life, even though I have no idea how I knew where to find her. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from all of you. Now let me tell you exactly what happened. It started like any other Sunday night. I had spent the afternoon at my younger brother's apartment about 2 hours east of where I live. His name is Dante, and he's 28. We've always been close. When we were kids, I walked him to school every single day. I helped him with his homework. I scared off the bullies who picked on him in middle school. Our grandmother used to say I was born to be his protector, and honestly, she was right. Dante had been going through a rough patch. His marriage fell apart 6 months earlier, and even though he kept saying he was fine, I knew better. That's why I made the drive every couple of weeks, just to check on him, just to make sure he was eating real food and not just cereal for dinner. That particular Sunday, we ordered pizza and watched a football game. He seemed okay at first, laughing at the bad plays, complaining about the refs like normal. But then the game ended, and he got quiet. He started talking about his ex-wife, about all the things he wished he'd done differently, about how lonely his apartment felt at night. I stayed longer than I planned. I couldn't leave him like that. So we talked for another 2 hours. I told him what I always tell him, that he's going to get through this, that better days are coming, that I'm always just a phone call away. By the time I finally hugged him goodbye, it was already past 9:30. I was tired, that deep kind of tired that settles into your bones when you've been the strong one for too long. I wanted nothing more than to get home, let my dog out, and collapse into bed. The night was cold and clear. October in Ohio means you can see your breath, and the stars look sharper than they do any other time of year. I got into my car, plugged my phone into the charger, and set my GPS to home. I didn't need directions. I knew that route so well I could probably drive it with my eyes closed. But I liked seeing the estimated arrival time on the screen. It made me feel like everything was planned out, predictable, under control. I pulled onto the highway and settled into the drive. The road was mostly empty at that hour, just a few trucks passing by, their headlights bright against the darkness. I had a podcast playing, something about unsolved mysteries that I only half paid attention to. My coffee was still warm in the cup holder. Everything felt normal. I passed all the usual landmarks. The old grain silo that's been leaning to the left for as long as I can remember. The gas station that closes at 8 no matter what. The crooked billboard advertising a church I've never seen anyone attend. Every mile marker was exactly where it should be. My mind kept drifting back to Dante. I thought about our grandmother, who raised us after our parents split up. She passed away 4 years ago, but I still hear her voice in my head sometimes. She made me promise to always look after Dante, and I took that promise seriously. Maybe too seriously. Sometimes I wonder who's supposed to look after me. I was about 40 minutes into the drive when it happened. The GPS screen flickered once, and then a calm, robotic voice filled the car. Rerouting. I frowned and looked at the screen. The blue line of my route had changed completely. Instead of staying on the highway for another 30 miles, the GPS was directing me to take the next exit onto a road I had never seen before. I didn't think much of it at first. Sometimes these apps find a faster route. Sometimes there's traffic up ahead, but something felt off. The highway was empty. There was no reason to reroute. I watched the new path on the screen. It was taking me onto a county road that wound through farmland, deep into an area I didn't recognize. The road had a number instead of a name. County Road 441. I told myself it was fine. Maybe there was construction ahead that I didn't know about. Maybe the GPS knew something I didn't. So I took the exit. The moment I turned onto that road, everything changed. The streetlights disappeared. The houses disappeared. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and my headlights were the only source of light for what felt like miles. Trees pressed in close on both sides of the road, their bare branches reaching toward my car like fingers. I slowed down. This didn't feel right. I had lived in this area my entire life, and I had never seen this road. I didn't even know it existed. That's when I decided to override the GPS. I tapped the screen and entered my home address again, expecting the map to recalculate and send me back to the highway. The screen flickered, and then it went black. For a moment, I thought the whole system had crashed, but then white text appeared in the center of the screen. Simple letters against a dark background. "You'll understand in 5 miles." I stared at those words, and my entire body went cold. My first instinct was to slam on the brakes and turn around. Every part of my brain was screaming at me that something was deeply wrong. GPS systems don't send text messages. They don't communicate like that. This wasn't a glitch or a software update. This was something else entirely. I pulled over to the side of the road and put the car in park. My hands were trembling as I reached for the GPS screen and pressed every button I could find. I tried to turn it off. I tried to restart it. I held down the power button for 10 seconds, then 20. Nothing worked. The screen stayed black with those 5 words glowing white in the center. "You'll understand in 5 miles." I grabbed my phone to call someone, anyone, Dante, the police. I didn't care who answered, but when I looked at the screen, my stomach dropped. No signal, not a single bar. I held the phone up toward the windshield, then toward the passenger window, hoping to catch even a weak connection. Nothing. I was completely alone on a road that shouldn't exist, with a GPS that had stopped taking orders and a phone that couldn't reach the outside world. I sat there for what felt like 5 minutes, trying to calm myself down. I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe I had driven into some kind of dead zone. Maybe the GPS was malfunctioning because of a bad software update. Maybe I was just exhausted and overthinking everything. But no matter how many excuses I made, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for me at the end of those 5 miles. I thought about turning around. The road was narrow, but I could manage a 3-point turn if I was careful. I could go back to the highway and take the long way home. That was the smart thing to do. That was what any reasonable person would do. But I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was stubbornness. Or maybe it was something deeper, something I couldn't name. I put the car back in drive and kept going. The road stretched out ahead of me, swallowed by darkness beyond the reach of my headlights. I drove slowly, maybe 25 miles per hour, watching the odometer tick upward. Every 1/10 of a mile felt like a countdown to something I wasn't ready for. At mile 1, I passed an abandoned car on the side of the road. It was an old sedan, rusted and covered in dead leaves. The windows were smashed in, and the driver's side door was hanging open like someone had left in a hurry. I didn't stop to look closer. I didn't want to know what had happened there. At mile 2, I saw a mailbox standing at the edge of the road. It was painted white, but the paint was peeling and the wooden post was rotting at the base. I looked past it, expecting to see a driveway or a house, but there was nothing, just trees and darkness. A mailbox with no home to belong to. At mile 3, my headlights caught something in the ditch on the right side of the road. I slowed down and squinted through the windshield. It was a child's bicycle, pink with white streamers on the handlebars. It was lying on its side in the dead grass, the front wheel bent at an unnatural angle. I felt a chill run through my entire body. I pressed the gas a little harder. At mile 4, the trees began to thin out, and I could see open fields on both sides of the road. The clouds shifted, and for a moment, the moon broke through. Its pale light illuminated the landscape, and I realized I was driving through what used to be farmland. The fields were overgrown now, choked with weeds and wild grass. In the distance, I could see the silhouettes of old barns and silos, their shapes black against the dark blue sky. And then I saw the house. It appeared at the end of the road like it had been waiting for me. A two-story farmhouse with a wraparound porch and broken windows. The paint had peeled away years ago, leaving bare gray wood exposed to the elements. The front door was hanging open, swaying slightly in the wind. There were no lights inside, no signs of life, just a dark, empty building that looked like it hadn't been lived in for decades. My car began to slow down on its own. I hadn't touched the brake, but the speedometer was dropping. 20 miles per hour, 15, 10, 5. The engine didn't die. It was like something was gently easing off the gas pedal for me, guiding me to a stop right at the edge of the gravel driveway. I looked at the GPS screen. The message had changed. 2 new words now glowed against the black background. She's inside. I sat in my car staring at those 2 words until my eyes started to burn. She's inside. What did that mean? Who was inside? And how did my GPS know anything about it? None of this made sense. I was a veterinary technician from Ohio. I spent my days taking care of sick animals and my nights watching cooking shows with my dog. I wasn't the kind of person who ended up in situations like this. This was the kind of thing that happened in horror movies, not in real life. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles had turned white. I forced myself to let go and take a deep breath. I looked at the house again, hoping it would seem less terrifying the second time. It didn't. The broken windows looked like empty eye sockets staring back at me. The open front door felt like an invitation I didn't want to accept. Every instinct I had was telling me to put the car in reverse and get out of there as fast as possible. But then I thought about those words again. She's inside. Not something. Not someone. She? A woman. A person who might be in trouble. A person who might need help. I thought about what my grandmother would say if she were sitting next to me. She was a woman of deep faith, and she believed that everything happened for a reason. She believed that God put people in certain places at certain times because they were meant to be there. I had never been sure if I believed that too, but sitting in that car, staring at that house, I started to wonder if maybe she was right. I thought about Dante. I thought about all the times I had shown up for him when he needed someone. I thought about the promise I made to our grandmother before she died. I told her I would always protect the people who needed protecting. I told her I would never turn my back on someone who was suffering. Was this a test of that promise? I reached over to the glove compartment and pulled out the flashlight I kept there for emergencies. The batteries were fresh. I had replaced them a few weeks ago after using it to look for my dog's toy under the couch. Then I got out of the car and walked around to the trunk. I opened it and grabbed the tire iron that sat next to the spare. It was heavy in my hand, solid and reassuring. If something was waiting for me in that house, at least I wouldn't be completely defenseless. The gravel crunched under my feet as I walked toward the porch. The sound was impossibly loud in the silence of that night. There were no crickets chirping, no wind rustling through the trees, no cars passing in the distance, just my footsteps and the pounding of my own heart. I climbed the porch steps slowly, testing each one before putting my full weight on it. The wood was soft and rotting in places, and I didn't want to fall through. The front door was still swaying gently, creaking on its rusted hinges. I pushed it open with the end of my flashlight and stepped inside. The smell hit me immediately. It was damp and musty, like a basement that hadn't been aired out in years. But there was something else underneath it, something chemical, something wrong. I covered my nose with my sleeve and kept moving. The inside of the house was exactly what I expected. Peeling wallpaper, broken furniture, trash scattered across the floor. It looked like no one had lived here in a very long time. I swept my flashlight across the room, looking for any sign of movement. There was nothing, just dust and shadows. I called out into the darkness. "Hello? Is anyone here?" My voice echoed through the empty rooms and faded into silence. I waited. Nothing. I called out again, louder this time. "If someone is here, I want to help you. I'm not going to hurt you." And then I heard it. A sound so faint I almost missed it. A whimper, soft and weak, coming from somewhere deeper in the house. It was the sound of someone in pain, someone who had given up hope of being found. I followed the sound down a narrow hallway, stepping over broken glass and fallen plaster. The whimpering grew louder as I approached a door at the end of the hall. It was a plain wooden door, painted white, but now chipped and dirty, and it had a padlock on the outside. Someone had locked this door from the outside. Someone had trapped a person in there and left them alone in this abandoned house. I didn't hesitate. I raised the tire iron and brought it down on the padlock as hard as I could. The metal clanged but didn't break. I hit it again and again. My arms were burning and my shoulders ached, but I didn't stop. On the fifth swing, the padlock finally snapped and fell to the floor. I pulled the door open and shined my flashlight down a narrow staircase leading into the basement. The whimpering had stopped. Everything was silent. I gripped the tire iron tighter and started walking down the stairs, not knowing what I was about to find, but knowing I couldn't turn back now. The stairs creaked with every step I took. The air grew colder as I descended, and the smell became stronger. It was a mix of mold, sweat, and something metallic that I didn't want to think about. My flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing concrete walls stained with moisture and a dirt floor covered in debris. This basement hadn't been used for storage or laundry. This was a place where someone had been kept against their will. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I swept the flashlight across the room. There were old wooden shelves against one wall, empty except for a few rusted cans. A broken chair sat in the corner, its legs snapped off, and then the beam of light landed on something that made my heart stop. A woman was huddled in the far corner of the basement. She was young, maybe early 20s, with dark hair that was matted and tangled. Her clothes were torn and filthy. Her wrists were raw and bleeding, the skin rubbed away from what looked like rope burns. She was curled into a ball with her arms wrapped around her knees, and she was shaking so violently I could see it from across the room. I lowered the flashlight slightly so it wouldn't blind her and spoke as softly as I could. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help." She didn't respond. She didn't even look up. I took a slow step toward her, then another. I kept talking the whole time, keeping my voice calm and steady even though my insides were screaming. "My name is Jocelyn. I don't know how I found this place, but I'm going to get you out of here. Can you tell me your name?" For a long moment, there was nothing, and then she lifted her head just enough for me to see her face. Her eyes were hollow and sunken, ringed with dark circles. Her lips were cracked and dry. She looked like she hadn't eaten or slept in days. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Renata. My name is Renata." I knelt down beside her and fought the urge to cry. Up close, I could see how bad her condition really was. She was emaciated, her cheekbones sharp against her skin. There were bruises on her arms and a cut on her forehead that had scabbed over. Whoever had done this to her had not shown any mercy. I reached out and gently touched her shoulder. "Renata, I need you to try to stand up. Can you do that for me? We have to get out of here." She shook her head weakly. "He said no one would ever find me. He said I was going to die here." I felt a wave of anger rise up in my chest. I didn't know who had taken this woman or what he had done to her, but I knew one thing for certain. He was wrong. I found you, and you're not going to die. Not tonight. Not like this. I put my arm around her and helped her to her feet. She was so light it scared me. I could feel her bones through her thin shirt. She leaned against me heavily, unable to support her own weight. We moved toward the stairs together, one slow step at a time. Getting up the stairs was the hardest part. Renata could barely lift her legs, and I had to practically carry her. The tire iron was still in my other hand, and I refused to let go of it. I didn't know if we were alone in this house, and I wasn't taking any chances. When we finally reached the top of the stairs, I heard a sound that turned my blood to ice. A car engine. Somewhere outside, headlights were cutting through the darkness. Someone was coming down the driveway. I didn't stop to think. I half carried Renata through the hallway and out the front door. The cold night air hit us like a wall, but I didn't slow down. I could see my car still sitting at the edge of the driveway, and I could see another set of headlights approaching from the road. Whoever was coming, they were going to arrive in less than a minute. I threw open the passenger door and helped Renata inside. She collapsed against the seat, too weak to even fasten her own seatbelt. I ran around to the driver's side, jumped in, and turned the key. The engine roared to life. I slammed the car into reverse and hit the gas without looking back. The tire spun on the gravel before catching, and we shot backward down the driveway. I could see the other vehicle now. It was a dark pickup truck, and it was getting closer. I didn't wait to see who was driving. I spun the wheel, turned the car around, and floored it down that dark county road. I didn't stop driving until I hit the highway. The moment my phone showed one bar of signal, I called 911 and told them everything. The police arrived within 20 minutes of my call. I had pulled over at a gas station on the highway, the first sign of civilization I had seen since leaving that house. Renata was drifting in and out of consciousness in the passenger seat, and I stayed with her the entire time, holding her hand and telling her she was safe now. When the ambulance came, the paramedics had to gently pry her fingers away from mine. She didn't want to let go of me. I didn't want to let go of her either. I spent the next several hours at the police station giving my statement. I told them everything. The GPS rerouting on its own, the message on the screen, the abandoned house at the end of the road, the padlocked basement door. They listened without interrupting, but I could see the confusion on their faces. They didn't know what to make of my story. Honestly, neither did I. Over the next few days, the details of Renata's case began to emerge. Her full name was Renata Osman. She was 23 years old and had been a nursing student at a college about 40 miles from where I found her. 11 days before that night, she had disappeared from a grocery store parking lot. Her family had been searching for her ever since. They had put up flyers. They had organized search parties. They had begged the local news to cover her story, but no one had any leads. It was like she had vanished into thin air. The man who took her was a drifter named Carl Breton. He had a criminal record that stretched back 15 years, including charges for assault and kidnapping in 2 other states. He had been watching Renata for weeks before he grabbed her. His plan was to hold her for ransom, demanding money from her family in exchange for her safe return. But when her family couldn't come up with the amount he wanted, he abandoned the plan. He left her locked in that basement with no food and no water, intending to let her die alone in the darkness. The police caught him 2 days after I rescued Renata. He was pulled over for a broken taillight about 60 miles south of the farmhouse. When they searched his truck, they found rope, duct tape, and a hunting knife. He confessed to everything within hours. The detective who called to tell me said that if I hadn't found Renata when I did, she would have been dead within 48 hours. Her body was already shutting down from dehydration and starvation. I visited Renata in the hospital a week after that night. She was still weak, but the color had returned to her face, and her eyes had life in them again. Her mother was sitting beside her bed, and when she saw me walk through the door, she stood up and pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. She kept saying thank you over and over again, tears streaming down her cheeks. She called me a guardian angel. She said I had given her daughter back to her. I didn't feel like an angel. I just felt like someone who had been in the right place at the right time. Or maybe the right place had found me. The police and several tech specialists examined my GPS system after that night. They pulled it apart and analyzed every piece of software and hardware they could find. There was no explanation for what happened. No evidence of hacking. No record of the reroute in the system's history. As far as the technology was concerned, that detour never happened. The road I drove down, County Road 441, did exist on old county maps, but it had been officially closed for 15 years. There were barriers at both ends that should have prevented anyone from entering. I never saw any barriers that night. I think about that night all the time. I think about my grandmother and the promises I made to her. I think about all the times I wished someone would look out for me the way I look out for everyone else. Maybe something did. Maybe the universe, or fate, or something I can't explain knew that I was the kind of person who wouldn't drive away. Maybe it knew I would break down that door and carry a stranger up those stairs. I still don't know why my GPS chose me that night. I don't know how it knew Renata was there, or why it decided I was the one who needed to find her. But I do know this. Some roads aren't about where you're going. They're about who you're meant to find. And if I had to drive down that dark road 100 more times, I would do it without hesitation. Because Renata is alive. She's finishing her nursing degree now. She's going to spend her life helping people, saving people, the same way I saved her. The GPS in my car has worked perfectly ever since that night. It takes me exactly where I ask it to go. No detours, no strange messages, no unexplained reroutes. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm driving alone on an empty highway, I catch myself glancing at the screen. Part of me is afraid of what I might see, but another part of me, a bigger part, is waiting to see if it has somewhere else I need to be, someone else I need to find. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe to my channel and leave a comment telling me what you would have done if your GPS sent you down that dark road. I read every single comment, and I love hearing your thoughts.